Is Jez Hall. I'm from Shared Future CIC, and I'm going to be talking about getting communities on board with just transitions, deliberative democracy, and climate change. And it discusses our work on these topics. So at Shared Future, we are practiced at engaging residents in complex issues. That is, we lead conversations on topics such as climate change, based on connecting lived experience and expert science. We promote many democratic tools for citizen action, and primarily the ones I'm going to be talking about today are citizens' juries and participatory budgeting. So what are citizens' assemblies and juries? You've probably heard about citizens' assemblies. Basically, they're processes of deliberation. They generally have an oversight group. They are made up of randomly selected members of the general public. They have independent facilitators. So Shared Future are one of those. We are one of many organizations that facilitate these processes. They hear from witnesses or commentators, and they finally deliver a set of recommendations. So citizens' assemblies typically are 40 to 200 people, randomly selected. An example you've heard of probably is the Irish Citizens' Assembly, but in the last few years there's been quite a few on the climate change topic. But we specialise in citizens' juries. These are smaller processes of 20 to 40 randomly selected people. And one of the examples is our Leeds Climate Change Citizens' Jury, which I'm going to go into in a bit more depth. The Leeds Climate Change Citizens' Jury happened between September and November 2019, and the format was 8 evenings of about 2 hours, 3 hours per session, plus 1 full day session. And there were about 25 participants in that process. We always set up an oversight panel, which brings diverse perspectives who help shape the process. So this is just a list of the people who are involved in another of our processes, the Kendal Climate Change Citizens' Jury, and they include representatives of climate activist groups such as Extinction Rebellion and youth climate change organizations, but also more traditional people involved in these processes, the private sector, voluntary sector, universities, and of course the statutory agencies with responsibility for climate change over the next few years in that area. We talked about recruitment. We do this through wide mailings of letters to the general public from the electoral roll and other sources, from which we hope to recruit around 300 potential people who have expressed an interest, and in our citizens' juries we make a final selection of about 30. And here is a random stratified sample. This is the way that we recruit people, so we make sure that there's a balance of age, gender, ethnicity, indices of deprivation, disability, geography. These are all linked to known statistics on the general population. But we also have attitude to climate change. So in the Leeds process, we asked a question about whether people were very fairly or not concerned about climate change. And the numbers in bold show the numbers who eventually took part with those perspectives. And they were matched to be similar to national statistics on people's concerns about climate change. The challenge question is, what should Leeds do about the emergency of climate change? So a very broad question, allowing people to explore many different perspectives of the complex topic. But we could make that more focused around retrofit or around just transitions to or energy poverty. But we took a very broad brush. The first session of our inquiries generally is about building relationships, getting people comfortable about working together. And then we move on to explore their lived experiences of the topic. So we basically get them to understand the valuable knowledge that exists in the room amongst citizens when talking about climate change. And we also look at the systemic issues. So we use facilitation techniques to explore what are the systemic barriers or problems that people are facing and what might solutions look like if we were successful. So again, we could focus on the systemic roots of fuel poverty and why people are in those situations. We then move into the commentator sessions, which are 20-minute presentations followed by small group answer and question and answer sessions. And we also use techniques such as red carding in order to stop jargon so that the information is given in a way meaningful to the residents. And finally, we move through. So here's sorry, not finally. So here is an overview of the sorts of people that were invited to give presentations. So a wide range of topics are covered with some very complex and detailed information provided to the residents. Initially, these presenters are suggested by the oversight panel, but as the sessions progress, we tend to focus on the issues that matter to the participants. So in this case, we focused on transport, housing, community involvement and communication, and also some issues around the budgets, what money is available to make change happen. So the jury hears from an exhaustive list of different perspectives on the issue at hand. And then we move into a process of drafting, review, prioritizing, and reporting the recommendation. So the citizens typically report what they feel needs to be done to achieve the particular goal, in this case, respond to the emergency of climate change. And finally, there's a session where we launch the recommendations. This is led by members of the jury, two influencers, two stakeholders, two people who can make a difference on the topic, and that's followed by action planning sessions and official responses. And obviously, we've had the issue of COVID, which means that some of our face-to-face processes have stopped, but then we've moved online successfully. We've reconvened and completed the Lancaster Citizens Jury on Climate Change, and we've also completed the first fully online climate change jury in the town of Kendal. And we used to support the Zoom presentations an online deliberation platform called Your Priorities, which was actually used initially in Iceland to develop proposals for the Irish Landic constitutional reforms, but also it helps direct investments in Iceland towards projects that local people want to see happen. So I was going to mention very briefly participatory budgeting. That's the other thing that I'm really passionate about, which is a sort of well-structured citizen engagement process which focuses on public investment. So it's not talking about policies or principles or what we need to do, but it's really focusing in on how we are going to spend limited resources in the most efficient and effective way that meets the needs of those people who it's meant to benefit. And we've produced lots of toolkits about how to do this over the years. I could go on for another full presentation on all the detail on participatory budgeting. But more particularly, we've been seeing how it could link with the Green New Deal. So we know that Lisbon has a €5 million green PB. So they are putting considerable amounts of money, that's Lisbon Council, into initiatives that enable them to make a just transition. It's a mean to, they see it as a means to engage in discussing retrofit strategies or other policies. It enables citizens to take direct action on climate change themselves. And it's funding approaches towards a just transition. And for example, the city of Tallinn has recently had an €800,000 participatory budgeting process. It's just completed now. And what was really telling, and this is a common pattern, is that most of the projects that come forward have an environmental aspect or a well-being aspect. So in the case of Tallinn, many of the proposals were for exercise or opportunities for people to engage with the environment in a positive way. So that's my presentation. It's very brief. We'd be really interested in further conversations about how we can engage people in a positive set of dialogues that can elevate the issues of fuel poverty, that can make sure that we go towards just transitions, but can also deal with the complexities that are involved when we're going to be making that transition. So thank you very much.